Are you lost, too? He turned his head slowly. Standing 2 feet away from him was a little girl. She was small, maybe 4 or 5, with thick braids that had clearly been neat at the beginning of the day, but were now slightly unraveling on the right side. She had a pink rolling suitcase almost as tall as she was, a backpack shaped like a turtle, and a yellow raincoat 1 size too big. She was looking at him with complete, fearless curiosity. No calculation. No threat assessment. Just genuine interest in another human being. The kind of look only children give. He glanced around the immediate area. No adult rushing toward her. No panicked parent nearby. Just the late-night crowd of Terminal C. Travelers slumped against luggage, phones glowing against tired faces, a cleaning machine humming somewhere in the distance. "Where is your mother?" he asked. She pointed vaguely toward the airline service desk 30 meters away. "She's talking to the airplane people. Our flight got canceled. She told me to stay by the orange chair." She looked around with a small frown. "But there are a lot of orange chairs." He almost smiled. "I've been walking for a little bit," she added, with the gravity of someone confessing something significant. Every instinct he had said to take her to a staff member, hand her over, return to his seat. Clean, efficient, uninvolved. Instead, he heard himself say, "Yes." She blinked. "Yes, what?" "Yes," he said. "I'm lost too." She considered this with the seriousness of a small judge. Then she nodded once and sat down beside him, dragging her enormous suitcase in front of her like a shield. "My name is Lila," she said. "I'm 5. What's your name?" He told her. She tried it. Got it wrong by 1 syllable. Didn't apologize. "That's a hard name," she said, without any cruelty, just observation. "Yes," he agreed. "My mommy has a hard name too. People always say it wrong. She smiles and lets them." Lila swung her feet, which didn't reach the floor. "Do you smile when people say your name wrong?" "No." "What do you do?" "I correct them." She nodded slowly. "My mommy says that's valid too." He looked at her sideways. "You talk like you're 30. She seemed pleased by this. "My mommy says I came out already knowing things." A silence settled between them, oddly comfortable, the kind that doesn't need to be filled. Then, "Why do you look sad?" He didn't answer immediately. He was not in the habit of answering personal questions. He was barely in the habit of being asked them. "I was waiting for someone," he said finally. "Did they not come?" "No." She thought about this with her whole face, forehead creased, lips pressed together. Then she said quietly, "My mommy says grown-ups get lost in their hearts, not their feet." The words landed somewhere he hadn't expected. He had been sitting in Terminal C for 3 hours. He had come to Chicago following a thread so thin it barely existed. As contact had mentioned a name in passing, said she might be passing through O'Hare tonight. He hadn't told anyone he was coming. He had simply boarded a plane and crossed an ocean. And what that said about him was something he preferred not to examine too closely. She hadn't come through the gate. He had watched every face, every coat, every woman with that particular walk. The kind that looks like someone who always knows exactly where they're going, even when they don't. Nobody. His own flight had departed 40 minutes later. He had not moved. Now he was sitting with the wreckage of that choice, and a cold cup of black coffee, and a 5-year-old who had just said the most accurate thing anyone had said to him in years. "Maybe she got lost too," Lila added, still watching a luggage cart roll past in the distance. He went quiet, not the comfortable kind. "We should find your mother," he said. "Yes." She slid off the seat, grabbed her suitcase handle with both hands. "She's probably doing the face." "What face?" Lila scrunched her nose, pressed her lips together, and produced the expression of someone trying desperately to remain calm while spectacularly failing at it. He recognized it. He had made people wear that expression many times. in rooms with considerably higher stakes than a canceled flight. "Come," he said, standing. He didn't reach for her hand. He had no experience with children. None. And had spent his adult life making sure of it. But Lila solved the problem by reaching up and wrapping her fingers around two of his without asking. The way you pick up something that clearly belongs in your hand. Her hand was very small. He walked stiffly for 3 steps. Then something in him adjusted and simply allowed it. They moved through the terminal, the man in the black suit and the small girl in the yellow raincoat, her pink suitcase rattling loudly across the tile. A passing businessman glanced at them and then looked quickly away, as if he'd interrupted something private. They reached the airline service desk. Long line. He scanned the crowd. "Is she here?" he asked. Lila stood on her toes. "No. Maybe she went back to find me." "Do you know her number?" Lila recited it without hesitation. He looked at her. "She made me learn it," Lila said. "She said if I'm ever lost, I find a safe person and give them the number." She studied him. "You look safe." No one had ever called him that. Not once. He dialed. 4 rings. Voicemail. A woman's voice. Warm, composed. The voice of someone who had learned a long time ago to sound steady even when she wasn't. Said, "You've reached Naya. Leave a message, and I'll get back to you." He went completely still. Not because of what she said, because of the voice itself. He had carried that voice in his memory for 6 years. He had told himself he'd probably distorted it, made it something it wasn't, the way grief quietly edits things it's trying to keep alive. But there it was. Exactly as he remembered, he ended the call without leaving a message. "Is she not answering?" Lila asked. "Busy," he said. His voice came out steady. He was good at steady. "We'll look for her." "Okay," Lila said, with the total trust of someone who has made a decision and sees no reason to revisit it. "Stop right here." A little girl walked up to a stranger in a crowded airport and decided he looked safe. Out of everyone sitting in that terminal, she chose him. If that image is sitting somewhere in your chest right now, don't let it pass quietly. Subscribe and stay with this story, because what's coming is going to reach somewhere you weren't expecting. Drop a comment and tell us, has a stranger ever made you feel less alone? Even briefly. Even in the most unlikely place. The people who know what that feels like are exactly who this channel was built for. They checked the gate areas, the family restrooms, the small cafe still open at the far end of the concourse, where a tired barista was wiping the counter with the slow movements of someone counting down the last minutes of their shift. No one. Lila had not panicked. She walked beside him with the careful composure of a child who had decided that worrying was not useful, though he could see she was gripping her suitcase handle tighter than before. "Tell me about your mother," he said, partly to distract her, only partly. Lila considered where to begin. She works very hard. She goes on lots of planes. She says it's for her job, but I think she also just likes looking at clouds. She dragged her suitcase over a seam in the floor. "She makes really good tea. She's teaching me Swahili. And she laughs really loud when something is funny. Not a polite laugh. A real one." "Do you laugh like that?" she asked. "No. My mommy says real laughing is brave." She looked up at him. "Maybe you just need more things to laugh at." He didn't answer, but something in him moved, like a door opening a crack in a room that had been sealed for a long time. "What does she look like?" he asked. He kept his voice entirely neutral. "She's tall, dark skin. Her eyes are really pretty. Her hair is big and soft," Lila thought. "And she always smells like orange soap. Not fake orange, like real ones." He slowed almost imperceptibly. Something moved through him that he didn't examine. "She sounds like someone worth knowing," he said quietly. "She's the best person," Lila said without hesitation. She also makes jollof rice that makes your eyes close when you eat it. She glanced at him. Do you like jollof rice? I've never had it. Lila stopped walking and looked at him with the full weight of 5.5 years of accumulated life experience. That's sad, she said. He almost laughed. Not quite. But the closest he had come in a long time. They found the food court near the central hub, still partially lit. A few travelers scattered at tables. He steered them to a seat with clear sight lines to 2 different walkways, and sat with his back to the wall, out of a habit so old he no longer noticed he was doing it. Lila climbed into the seat across from him and propped her chin in both hands. You look like you're thinking very hard, she observed. I am. About finding my mommy? He said nothing. She accepted his silence with the equanimity of someone who has spent 5 years learning that adults don't always answer, and that this is their problem, not yours. Are you hungry? He asked. A little bit. What do you want? She thought about it with appropriate gravity. Hot chocolate, and something with cheese. He returned from the kiosk with hot chocolate, a cheese pretzel, and a bottle of water. Because he had no idea what children were supposed to drink, and water seemed like the safest guess. Lila wrapped both hands around the cup and took one small, careful sip. Good, she announced. She ate her pretzel in pieces, tearing each section with great precision. He watched the walkways. Do you have kids? She asked. No. Do you want them? I haven't thought about it. She found this answer insufficient. Why not? I didn't have time. My mommy didn't have time either, she said. But then she had me. A pause. She says I was a surprise, but not the scary kind, the good kind. He looked at her carefully. How old are you? He asked. 5. 5 fingers. Patient with the question. 5.5 almost. He was quiet. Outside the terminal windows, the storm had picked up. Rain moved sideways across the glass. Runway lights blurred and shifted in the wet. Do you have a dad? He asked. He kept his voice entirely even. Lila picked at her pretzel. My mommy says my dad is a story she's not ready to tell yet. Silence. She said when I'm older, Lila added. Then she looked up at him. Why are your eyes doing that? Doing what? They got big. Grown-ups' eyes don't usually go big. He looked away, back to the walkways, a story she's not ready to tell. He was a man who operated in certainties, data, verified facts, before action. He had nothing concrete here, only a sequence of small things pointing somewhere he wasn't ready to name. He would not build a conclusion on this. He was not that kind of man. But his hands were very still on the table in the specific way they went still when everything inside him was moving very fast. Let's find your mother, he said. Have you ever stood in front of something? A moment, a single sentence, a face you weren't prepared for, and felt the structure of everything you thought you knew shift underneath you? Not collapse, just shift. If you've ever loved someone and lost them in a way you couldn't explain even to yourself, this comment section wants to hear from you. Not the polished version, the real one. Subscribe if you've been here long enough to know this is where people come when they want to feel something true. Silence right now would feel like walking away from your own story. They moved with more urgency now. Lila matched his pace with small, quick steps, her hand back in his, her suitcase rattling loyally behind her. She had stopped chattering. She seemed to sense, the way children do, that something in him had changed, and that the change required quiet. She'll be near the help people, Lila said after a while. She always goes where the help people are. She says, find the person whose job it is to solve the problem. Smart, he said. She's the smartest, Lila said. Then, after a pause, she's also been a little sad lately. She thinks I don't notice. He looked down at her. What makes you think she's sad? he asked carefully. Lila shrugged one shoulder. She gets a look sometimes, when she's not talking, like she's thinking about something far away. She glanced up at him. Do you know that look? He said nothing. I think everyone has someone they think about like that, Lila continued, with the calm authority of a philosopher who happens to be wearing a turtle backpack, even when they don't say it. He looked straight ahead. How long has she had that look? He asked. Lila thought about it. Always, she said simply. For as long as I can remember. The information desk was near the central hub. A woman in a navy blazer was speaking into a radio, with the efficient calm of someone managing their 15th minor crisis of the night. He stepped forward. There's a missing child alert already filed, he said. She's here. Her name is Lila. Her mother should be somewhere in this terminal. The woman looked at Lila, then at him, then at her screen. Relief loosened her shoulders visibly. We do have an active alert. She picked up her radio. Can I ask your name, sir? A pause. Tell her someone found her. The woman blinked, then relayed the message. A brief response came back through the static, too fragmented to make out clearly. But the woman's expression shifted in a way he noticed. A small, involuntary thing, like a person who has just heard something unexpected. Lila looked up at him. Looked straight ahead. The family assistance room was 5 minutes away. He had walked into rooms where the outcome could have ended his life and had not slowed his pace. This was a room with a woman and a child, and a canceled flight. He did not slow down now, but he was aware of everything. The length of each corridor, the weight of Lila's hand, the sound of his own footsteps on the tile, a story she's not ready to tell. He turned the final corner. And there she was, standing outside the family room, speaking to a security officer, phone gripped in both hands. Her back was straight in the way that people hold themselves when they are afraid and have decided that showing it is not an option. Long, dark coat, hair pulled up, a few pieces fallen loose around her face. She looked exactly as he remembered. And nothing like what he had been imagining for 6 years, because imagination always flattens people into the version you need, and the real person is always fuller and more complicated and more devastating than that. She turned before Lila could call out. She turned as if she felt the weight of being looked at from across the corridor. Her eyes found Lila first. Instant, overwhelming relief flooding her face. And she dropped to her knees and opened her arms, and Lila ran the last 10 feet, suitcase rattling behind her, and crashed into her mother. And they held each other with the specific tightness of people who have just been reminded that love is not a feeling. It is a grip. He stood still. Then the woman looked up. She looked up the way you do when you already know what you'll find, when the body has already processed what the mind hasn't caught up to yet. Her eyes found him. She went completely still. Not the frightened kind, the kind that happens when the world rearranges itself in 1 second, and every category you have used to organize your life stops making sense at the same time. He watched something move through her face that he couldn't aim. Something that traveled like water through a cracked surface, finding every line. Neither of them spoke. Lila pulled back from her mother's arms, looked between the two adults and said, "I found him." The security officer quietly stepped back. The woman stood slowly, one hand still on her daughter's shoulder, and stared at the man in the black suit who had crossed an ocean on a rumor and missed his flight and spent an hour holding her daughter's hand through a terminal he had no business being in. "What are you doing here?" she asked. Her voice was careful, exactly as careful as it needed to be. "I was in the area," he said. Something crossed her face. Not quite a smile, not quite the opposite of one. "Terminal C," she said. "Gate C-14. She stared at him. "How long?" she asked. "Long enough to miss my flight." A silence. The ambient sounds of the terminal, distant announcements, rolling luggage, the muffled storm, filled the space where the next words should have been. "Because of me?" she asked. He didn't answer. That was answer enough. She looked down at her daughter. Lila was watching both of them with her chin slightly raised and her hands clasped around her turtle backpack, wearing the expression of a 5-year-old who has done something she is quietly and completely proud of. "Did you tell him anything?" the woman asked softly. "I told him my name," Lila said. "And I told him you have a look." The woman closed her eyes briefly, opened them. "What look?" "The one," Lila said simply, as if this required no further elaboration from anyone. The woman looked at him again. This time, the careful composure had shifted slightly. Not falling, just no longer sitting perfectly in place, the way a mask shifts when the person wearing it gets tired. "Can we sit down?" she said. "This is the moment where you need to take a side." He crossed an ocean on a rumor, sat in an airport for hours, and missed his flight. All for a woman who walked out of his life 6 years ago without a single word. She built an entire life in his absence. And now they're standing 10 feet apart in a midnight terminal with a 5-year-old between them who has already decided how this ends. Who do you think carries more of the weight here? Who had the right to make the choices they made? Drop your position in the comments, because this conversation is going to be something. Subscribe if you believe the most complicated love stories are the ones most worth following. They found seats near the large windows at the far end of the concourse. Outside, the storm pushed rain in sheets across the glass. Runway lights dissolved and reformed in the wet. Somewhere in the dark, a plane was making its slow, patient way through the night, wing lights blinking red and white. Lila sat between them. She had pulled her turtle backpack into her lap and was hugging it against her chest, her eyes moving quietly between the two adults, like someone reading a book. They have been waiting, a long time to reach. The woman was looking at her hands. He was watching the window. "How did you find out I was here?" she asked. "A contact. Someone mentioned your name. And you came." "Yes," she exhaled. "From Seoul." "Yes." She nodded once, filing it away. "I called your number," he said, "when we were looking for you. Lila gave it to me." The woman looked at her daughter. "You gave him my number." "He looked safe," Lila said again, with total unshakable confidence. The woman looked back at him, and something in her expression broke at the edges. "She's right," she said quietly. "You are. You always were. That was never the problem." "Then what was?" he said. Not a question. The quiet, final kind of statement that expects an answer. She looked at Lila. "Baby," she said softly, "can you take your suitcase and sit by that big window and count how many airplane lights you can see?" Lila looked at the window, then at her mother. "Will you still be here?" "I'm not going anywhere," she said. Lila slid off the seat, took her suitcase, walked to the window, pressed her forehead against the glass, and began to count. 1, 2. The woman turned to face him fully. "I left because I found out I was pregnant," she said. He said nothing. I sat with it for 3 days. Tried to think clearly and couldn't. Your world. The risk. Not of you. I knew you. I knew exactly how far you would go to protect something you loved." She paused. "That was exactly what scared me. Not that you'd fail. That you'd succeed. I didn't want her to grow up in the middle of all of it. Even with your protection. Even if it held perfectly." She looked at her hands. "I wanted her to have a life that was hers. Without the weight." He was quiet for a long moment. "You made that choice alone," he said. "Yes." "Without telling me." "Yes." "That wasn't yours to make alone." "I know." Her voice didn't flinch. "I've known that for 5 years. I don't have a defense for it. I made the choice I could make, at the time. She looked at him steadily. And I have carried it every single day since. From the window, Lila's small voice drifted back. 7. 8. I see a big one. Neither of them looked away from each other. She knows about you, the woman said before he could ask. Not everything. Pieces. She knows someone helped me once. Someone who... She stopped. Someone I didn't stop thinking about. She said the last part quietly, like something being admitted after a long time under pressure. He let that sit. What do you want to do? He asked. She looked at him for a long time. I want to stop running from the answer to that question, she said. Then stop, he said. She looked at him the way people look when they want to believe something is as simple as it sounds, and know from experience that it isn't. It's not just us, she said. I know. There are people in your world who would look at her and see a leverage point. I know that too. So how? I'll handle it. He said. That's exactly what I was afraid you'd say. Because it's true. Because you believe it's true, she said. And you've always believed it. That's not the same thing. He looked at her. Has anything happened to you in 6 years? Anyone who found you, who came for you, who made you feel unsafe? She paused. No, she admitted. Because I made sure of it, he said quietly. She stared at him. You were watching, she said. It wasn't entirely a question. I stopped looking for you after 2 years, he said. I didn't stop making sure you were safe. The silence that followed was a different kind than all the others. Not the silence of absence, or accusation, or old pain. The silence of something being understood for the first time. At the window, Lila announced, 13. No, wait. 12. One of them is a car. Neither of them spoke for a moment. Then the woman said, very quietly, Why? He looked at her. You know why, he said. She looked down at her hands again. When she looked back up, her eyes were bright, not tears. Something more restrained than that. The specific brightness of a person who has been holding something for so long, they've forgotten what it feels like to put it down. What happens now? She asked. That depends on what you're willing to do, he said. I live in London, she said. I know. She blinked. Kensington, he said. The building with the green door, 3rd floor. She stared at him. You've known where I was, she said slowly. For 4 years. And you never came. You needed space, he said. I gave it to you. She was quiet for a long moment. He could see her reassembling something inside herself, taking information she had organized one way and having to organize it completely differently. You were waiting for me to come back, she said. I was waiting, he said, for you to be ready. She looked at him for a long time. Then she looked at Lila, who had turned from the window and was watching them both with ancient, careful eyes. Mommy, Lila called. I think the storm is stopping. The woman looked at the window. She was right. The rain had slowed. The glass was clearing. The runway lights held steady now, no longer dissolving. She looked back at him. She has your eyes, the woman said quietly. I've never said that out loud before. Something happened in his chest that he did not have a name for. Not the absence of feeling. The opposite of that. The specific sensation of something returning to a place it had been kept out of for so long that the return itself felt like pain and relief at exactly the same time. I want to know her, he said. The woman held his gaze. She already knows you, she said. She just didn't have a name for you yet. Lila stood up from the window seat, picked up her backpack and her suitcase, walked back to them, and climbed into the seat between them with the ease of someone who had always planned to be exactly here. She looked at him, then at her mother, then at the narrowed space between the two adults, which was measurably smaller than it had been when she'd left for the window. "Are you still lost?" she asked him. He looked at this child, at the woman beside her, at the rain-cleared glass and the steady runway lights, and the long night that still had hours left in it, and whatever came after the night. "No," he said. Lila nodded once, satisfied, as if the entire evening had proceeded exactly according to a plan she had made in her head when she first walked up to a stranger and asked him a question that had no wrong answer. She leaned sideways against her mother. Her mother put one arm around her, and after a moment, without looking at him, the woman reached across Lila and placed her hand over his on the armrest. Not a gesture, not a statement, just a hand finding another hand in the dark. He turned his palm over and held on. Outside, the storm was gone, the first pale edge of something that wasn't yet dawn, but was the direction of it, sat low on the horizon beyond the runway. Somewhere in the terminal, a flight was being called. A gate was opening. The airport was slowly, quietly beginning its next chapter. And three people who had found each other in the most unlikely way, in the most unlikely place, on the most unlikely night, sat together near a window and breathed for the first time in a very long time. But here is what none of them knew yet. What was waiting on the other side of that night would test every single thing they had just chosen. Because the man in the black suit had a world. And that world had people in it. People who had been watching the same thread he followed to Chicago. People who understood, better than anyone, that the one way to reach a man who fears nothing is to find the thing he would give everything to protect. And somewhere in that airport, in the early hours of the morning, a phone was ringing in a jacket pocket that did not belong to him. And the person calling it knew exactly where he was. If you made it to the end of this first chapter, you already know this story is not finished. Not even close. There is a world waiting outside that airport. A world with enemies in it, with secrets that haven't surfaced yet, with a little girl who chose a stranger and changed 3 lives in one night. If this story reached somewhere in you, subscribe. Not as a reflex, as a choice. Because this channel is where people who have loved complicated things, lost them, and kept going anyway, come to feel seen. Drop a comment, not a polite one, the real kind. Tell us what you felt in this first chapter. Tell us what you think is coming. We read every single one. Now let's dive into the next part. He almost didn't answer it. The phone had been vibrating in his inside jacket pocket for the past 40 seconds. He had felt it, counted the intervals, recognized the pattern. Not a random caller. Someone who knew his private number and was willing to call it 3 times in a row at 2 in the morning, which meant it was either an emergency or a provocation. In his world, those 2 things were often the same. He looked at the woman beside him. She had fallen into a light sleep against the window. Lila curled against her side. The little girl's yellow raincoat spread over both of them like a blanket someone had arranged with great care. Lila's mouth was slightly open. Her turtle backpack had fallen sideways on the seat. He had not slept. He had sat very still for the past hour and watched the 2 of them breathe and thought about things he did not yet have language for. He stood carefully, making sure not to disturb either of them, and walked 20 feet down the concourse before he answered. "You're in Chicago," the voice said. No greeting. No preamble. The voice of a man who had never once needed those things. He recognized it immediately. Low, unhurried. The particular cadence of someone who had not raised his voice in 20 years because he had never needed to. Park Sung-jin, 61 years old. The closest thing he had to a mentor, and therefore the person he trusted least in the world. In his world, proximity and trust moved in opposite directions. "I'm traveling," he said. "You missed your flight," Park said. "You have never missed a flight, not in 14 years. So I'm asking myself why a man like you sits in an airport for 3 hours instead of boarding his plane." He said nothing. "And then I ask myself," Park continued pleasantly, "whether this has anything to do with a name I heard you say once, a long time ago, in a conversation you thought I wasn't listening to." The concourse was quiet at this hour. A cleaner moved slowly at the far end. Somewhere overhead, the ventilation system breathed. "What do you want, Sung-jin?" he said. "I want you in Seoul by Friday," Park said. "There's a situation. It can't wait, and it cannot be handled at a distance." A pause, the deliberate kind. "And I want to make sure that whatever you think you've found tonight doesn't become a liability." The word landed the way Park intended it to, placed, not thrown. "I'll be in Seoul by Friday," he said. "Good." Another pause. "And the woman?" "Is not your concern." "Everything that affects you is my concern," Park said. "That's why you're still alive. Think carefully about what you're doing. A man in your position, with your profile. If someone finds out you have a weakness, they won't come for you. They'll come for her." The line went quiet. He stood in the concourse for a moment after the call ended, phone in his hand. Then he looked back down the terminal toward the window, where the woman and the child were sleeping. Park was not wrong about the risk. He was never wrong about the risk. That was what made him dangerous. He identified threats accurately and addressed them without sentiment, and the distance between identifying a threat and eliminating it was very short in his world. The question was whether Park saw the woman and the child as a threat to him, or as a threat to Park's own carefully maintained structure. He thought he knew the answer. He walked back to the seats and sat down. The woman stirred at his return, her eyes opening halfway. "What time is it?" she asked, her voice low with sleep. "Almost 4. She looked at Lila, still asleep against her. Something moved through her face. Something private and complete. The look of a mother watching her child sleep that belongs to no one else. Then she looked at him, and the look became more complicated. "You didn't sleep," she said. "I got a call." She was awake immediately. Not the slow kind of awake, the kind that had learned over years to arrive fast. "From your world," she said. "Yes." She looked at him carefully. "How bad?" "Not bad yet," he said. "But it's a signal. Someone is paying attention to the fact that I'm here." She absorbed this without visible alarm, which was one of the things about her that had always stopped him. This quality of receiving difficult information without performing a reaction to it. She processed underneath and showed you the result, not the processing. "What does that mean for tonight?" she asked. "It means I need to move carefully," he said. "It means that whatever we decide here, we decide it, knowing that my world is not a thing I can simply step out of, not immediately, possibly not ever completely." She looked at her hands. "I know that," she said. "I need you to know it differently now," he said. "Not theoretically, actually." She looked up. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure you're both protected. But protection in my world is not a passive thing. It requires structure. It requires decisions. It requires you to trust that I know what I'm doing, even when I can't explain every step to you." She was quiet for a long moment. "That's what I couldn't do before," she said. "Trust what I couldn't see." "I know. And you're asking me to do it now." "I'm telling you," he said, "that I understand why you couldn't then. And I'm asking you to consider whether anything has changed." She looked at him steadily. "Has anything changed?" "Yes," he said. "I have." She searched his face. He let her look. He had nothing to hide tonight. How? She asked. He thought about how to say it honestly. He was not practiced at this. He was practiced at precision, at strategy, at language that did exactly the work required and nothing more. But this required something different. I spent 6 years telling myself I had moved past it, he said. I built things. I worked. I was efficient. I was effective. And none of it, he paused, none of it felt like it was for anything. I didn't understand that until tonight, until a 5-year-old sat down next to me and held my hand, and I couldn't think of a single reason to let go. The woman didn't move. She does that, she said softly. She finds the thing people need, and she just offers it. She's been doing it since she could walk. Where does she get it? He asked. The woman looked at him for a long moment. Her father was the bravest person I ever met, she said, and the loneliest. She got his courage and decided to use it differently. He went very still. Outside the window, the sky had thinned from black to a deep, dark blue. Not dawn yet, the suggestion of it. She's mine, he said. He said it quietly, not as a question, not as an accusation, just as a fact being spoken aloud for the first time. Yes, she said. And you were going to. I don't know what I was going to do, she said, and her voice cracked slightly on it, the first crack of the whole night. I told myself I was protecting her, and I was. I was also protecting myself from having to come back and face what I'd done, and face what I still felt, and face you standing in front of me like... She stopped. Like what? He said. She looked at him. Like someone I never stopped loving, she said, even when I was furious at myself for it. The words sat between them in the quiet of the terminal, enormous and plain. He reached across and took her hand. Not a gesture, not a statement, just a hand finding another hand, the way his daughter had shown him it was done. Without ceremony, without condition, because the person beside you needs to know you are there. She looked down at their joined hands. Then she turned her palm over and held on. Have you ever been so afraid of losing something that you destroyed it yourself, just to control the ending? Have you ever carried a choice for years that you knew was wrong and right at the same time, and had no idea how to put it down? If this moment is sitting somewhere in your chest right now, you're not alone in it. This community was built for the people who have loved at full cost. Subscribe if you've been here long enough to know that. And drop a comment, a real one, not polite. The kind you'd leave if no one was watching. We read every single one. They sat like that as the terminal slowly filled with the first sounds of the early morning. Gate agents arriving, luggage carts rolling, the lights brightening overhead as the airport shifted from its nighttime quiet into its daytime self. Lila woke at 5, with the immediate alert eyes of her father and the composure of her mother. Sat up, assessed the situation. Her mother's hand in the hand of the man from last night, her turtle backpack still present, her suitcase still standing, and nodded once as if confirming that things had proceeded as expected. "Are we getting breakfast?" she asked. The woman laughed. It was the real kind, the loud, unguarded kind, the kind that didn't ask permission, and it moved through the terminal like light through a window, and he felt it land somewhere in the center of his chest and stay there. They found the cafe that had just opened. Lila ordered eggs with the butter on the side with the authority of someone who had been burned before. The woman ordered coffee, and he ordered enough food for both of them, and she looked at the plate when it arrived, and then looked at him and said nothing, which was its own kind of surrender. They ate in the comfortable silence of people who have moved past the part that required words. Lila narrated quietly, the man asleep at his table, the woman with the enormous suitcase, The small, anxious dog in the carrier under the chair of a young man who kept checking his phone. That dog knows something the man doesn't know yet, Lila said. The dog is anxious about travel, the woman said. No, Lila said firmly. That's a different face. He looked at the dog. The dog looked back with the steady, mournful gaze of an animal who had seen too much. She might be right, he said. The woman pointed her fork at him. You have been here one night. Long enough, he said. She fought the smile. Lost. He watched her lose it and felt something settle in him that had been unsettled for years. After breakfast, they walked back through the terminal, Lila a few steps ahead, narrating to her turtle backpack. He and the woman walked beside each other, close enough that their arms touched occasionally. I have to go back to Seoul, he said. I know. There are things I need to close out, decisions I need to make about how I operate going forward. It won't be immediate. It won't be simple. I'm not asking you to dismantle your life overnight, she said. But there are parts of it that have to change. Yes, she said. There are. I need to know you understand what that process looks like, he said. It's not clean. There will be moments where I have to do things you won't like in order to reach the outcome we both want. She was quiet for a moment. Will you tell me the truth when I ask? Yes. Even when it's difficult? Especially then, he said. She looked at him. That's all I ever needed, she said. Not perfection. Not a different life. Just the truth. I know that now, he said. I didn't know how to give it before. She held his gaze. Neither did I. Ahead of them, Lila had stopped and turned around, supervising their walking distance with visible concern. You're too far apart again, she said. He looked at the woman. The woman looked at him. He held out his arm. She looked at it for exactly 1 second, the second of a person stepping off something they have been standing on for 6 years. And then she put her hand through his, and they walked to the gate together, while Lila watched with quiet, complete satisfaction, and then turned and led the way. At the gate, Lila fell asleep again almost instantly, her head in her mother's lap. The woman stroked her hair without looking at it. She really does have your eyes, she said softly. He looked at the sleeping child, at the face he had not known for 5 years, and could not imagine not knowing now. I want to be there, he said. Not from a distance, actually there, for the things that matter. School pickups, she said. Weekend arguments about butter being on the side. All of it, he said. She looked at him. You understand what that means, what it looks like from the outside. People will find out. Let them find out, he said. Your people. My people will understand that she is protected, he said. Not a vulnerability, not a leverage point. Protected. Anyone who thinks otherwise will be corrected. She heard the weight in the word corrected, and did not flinch from it. And Park? She asked. He looked at her. You heard the name? I was half asleep, she said. Not fully. He almost smiled. Park is a problem I will handle before I arrive in London. She looked at him carefully. Handle how? Carefully, he said. And permanently. She was quiet. Then, promise me it won't come to our door. It won't come to your door, he said. I will make sure of it before I step onto that plane. She studied him for a long moment. Then she nodded once. The nod of someone who has decided to believe something, not because they have proof, but because they have chosen to. When will you come? She asked. 2 weeks, he said. Maybe less. Lila will ask every day. Tell her 2 weeks, he said. I'll try to make it less. She looked at him. Don't try. Do it. She counts things. She'll hold you to it. Good, he said. She looked surprised by that. I need someone to hold me to things, he said. I've spent 20 years with no one to answer to." She held his gaze. "How has that been?" "Efficient," he said, "and completely empty." The gate agent called the London flight. The woman woke Lila with the quiet, practiced motion of someone who had done it thousands of times. And Lila came back to herself in the way she always did. Immediately, completely, with zero transition. She found her backpack, checked her suitcase, stood up. Then she looked at him. "Are you coming?" she asked. "Not on this one," he said. She looked at him steadily. "But you're coming." "Yes." "To London." "To London." She thought about this for a moment. Then she reached into her turtle backpack and took out a piece of paper, folded many times, slightly crumpled, clearly important to her for some time. She unfolded it carefully with both hands. A crayon drawing. A small figure in yellow. A tall figure in dark. Between them, two hands connected. The hands were drawn in careful, deliberate strokes, slightly smudged, but clearly intentional. Clearly done more than once until they looked right. She held it out to him. He took it. "So you remember what we look like," she said. He looked at the drawing for a long moment. Something moved through him that had no name and didn't need one. He folded it carefully and placed it in his inside jacket pocket. "I won't forget," he said. She nodded, satisfied, and then took her mother's hand without ceremony and began walking toward the gate. The woman paused at the entrance. She turned back. She looked at him standing in the gate area with a child's crayon drawing in his pocket, and the morning coming through the windows behind him, and everything that had been impossible for 6 years, somehow arranged differently now. Not simple, not clean, but possible. Actually possible. 2 weeks, she said. Less, he said. She held his gaze one last moment. Then she turned and walked through the gate. He watched until the door closed behind them. Then he sat down in the empty gate area and did something he had not done in longer than he could remember. He made a call that had nothing to do with strategy. He called his own lawyer, his personal one, not the firm's. He gave him instructions, specific ones, the kind that take years to prepare for and seconds to say, about a trust, about a name to be added to documents, about the kind of protection that exists on paper and therefore cannot be argued with. Then he made the second call. Park answered on the first ring. "I've been thinking about what you said," he told him. "Good," Park said. "You were right that having something to lose makes a man vulnerable," he said. "You were wrong about what to do about it." Silence. "I'm not removing the vulnerability," he said. "I'm making sure that anyone who looks at it understands that touching it is not a survivable decision." A long pause. "That's a significant shift," Park said. "Yes," he said. "It is. And if I told you I had concerns about the stability of that position, I would tell you," he said quietly, "that I have concerns about the stability of anyone who shares those concerns. Are we understanding each other?" Another pause. Longer. "Perfectly," Park said. "Good. I'll be in Seoul Thursday. We'll close out the situation and then I have somewhere to be." He ended the call. He sat for a moment in the quiet of the empty gate. Outside, the sun had fully risen now. The runway was lit and clear, and the morning was doing what mornings do, arriving without asking permission, making everything visible that the dark had covered. He took the crayon drawing out of his pocket, unfolded it, looked at it. A small figure in yellow, a tall figure in dark, 2 hands holding each other in the middle, done in the careful, deliberate strokes of a 5-year-old who had decided what the picture should look like and had not stopped until it was right. She had made this before tonight, before she walked up to a stranger in a terminal and asked him if he was lost. She had already drawn the ending. He folded it back carefully and put it away. Then he picked up his phone and rebooked his flight. Not Seoul direct. Seoul, then London. 10 days, not 2 weeks. He had things to close, a world to restructure from the inside, decisions that would take time and care, and the specific kind of precision that meant no loose ends, no exposure, nothing that could follow him through the door he was about to walk through. But the door existed now. It had a green frame and a third-floor flat, and a little girl who counted things and held people's hands without asking, and had drawn a picture of an ending she believed in, before she had any reason to. He stood up. He walked through the terminal in the full morning light, past the cafe where they had eaten breakfast, past the gate where they had slept, past the spot in Terminal C where a small girl had rolled a pink suitcase up to a man in a black suit, and asked him the question that had rearranged his entire life in the space of a single night. He did not look like a man who was lost. He looked like a man who knew exactly where he was going. And 9 days later, on a Tuesday morning in London, a black car stopped outside a building with a green door in Kensington. A man in a dark coat stepped out, carrying nothing except a small package and a crayon drawing folded in his inside pocket. He pressed the buzzer for the 3rd floor. A few seconds passed. Then a voice, small, immediate, completely unsurprised, came through the speaker. "I knew it would be less than 2 weeks," Lila said. He stood at the green door. "You counted," he said. "Every day," she said. The door buzzed open. He went in, and upstairs, on the 3rd floor, a woman stood in the hallway, with her arms folded and her eyes bright and her hair loose around her face. And beside her, a small girl in a yellow cardigan was bouncing slightly on her heels with the contained excitement of someone who has been waiting for something they were certain was coming. He stopped in the doorway. He looked at the woman. She looked at him. "You're early," she said. "I told you I'd try," he said. "You said less than 2 weeks." 9 days, he said. She held his gaze. Then her mouth curved. Slow. Real. The kind that started in the eyes first. 9 days, she said. Lila reached up and took his hand. He looked down at her. She looked up at him with those eyes, his eyes in her face clear and direct and entirely certain. "Come in," she said. "I'll show you my room." He stepped through the door. The woman closed it behind him. And outside, London carried on with its Tuesday morning, the traffic and the gray sky, and the particular light of an autumn day that cannot decide between clouds and sun, entirely unaware that inside a 3rd-floor flat with a green door, 3 people were beginning something that had been a long time coming. Not perfect, not simple, but real, and chosen. Fully, finally, chosen. If you stayed until the end of this story, then you know that it was never really about an airport. It was about the things we abandon out of fear and spend years grieving quietly. About the children who see through every wall we build. About the love that survives our worst decisions and waits, not because it has no other choice, but because it knows something we haven't admitted yet. If this story reached something in you, subscribe. Not as a reflex, as a recognition. This channel is for people who understand that the most important arrivals are always the ones we almost didn't allow. Leave a comment and tell us what this story gave you. Tell us what it reminded you of. Tell us what you would have done differently. This community reads every word, and we will see you in the next story.